All right, folks, welcome back to AI Analysis via Statistics. I'm your host, Ira Warren Whiteside, and today we're taking a bit of a historical detour, at least on the surface. Now, if you caught our last couple of episodes, you know I'm obsessed with finding those repeating signatures in the data, the ones that almost whisper, hey, this has happened before. That's where we kick off today, the French Revolution. So when we think of the French Revolution, yeah, that late 18th century chaos with guillotines and powdered wigs, it can be easy to treat it like a closed history book. But actually, it's more like a template that radicals and revolutionaries have been photocopying ever since. The ingredients were all there: complete upheaval, radical universalist ideologies, mass mobilization, the whole let's flip the script mentality. And I might be wrong here, but doesn't it just feel like every time you pull up the data on political turbulence, you see little echoes of those original anomalies? I mean, as a data analyst, 30 plus years pounding on tables and teasing weird stuff out of numbers, I keep spotting these odd statistical glitches whenever a movement goes full revolution. You get unpredictability in the early French charts: grain price spikes, pamphlet frequency, sudden shifts in language. Fast forward, and oddly enough, you see those same unpredictable data points pop up again wherever there's a big push to upend the order. Doesn't matter if we're talking about the Bolsheviks, 1968, or even recent social upheavals. My point is, there's a kind of metabolic pattern to it, statistically speaking. Like, once the revolutionary bug bites, the anomalies start stacking up in the data and culture, just like back then. Plus, the universalist ideology thing, it's no small matter. The French cooked up this idea that their revolution and their ideology ought to be, well, universal. Everyone was supposed to get on board, which set a precedent for later radical projects. And the wild part is, this legacy didn't just spark uprisings. It triggered all sorts of reactions, way outside of France. We see the same playbook over and over. So, where was I going with this? Oh, right. The pattern that sets up the next round of societal churn. So if the French Revolution is our starting blueprint, the next statistical echo, and I love seeing echoes play out in data, shows up in the clash around communism. Now you've got this big transformative ideology, aiming for a total overhaul. But you know what always comes hot on its heels? The backlash. The Red Scare is textbook for this kind of reaction. Like, we're talking wild spikes in repression stats, surveillance, guys getting hauled before committees for just reading a pamphlet. Sometimes when I'm mapping these statistical cycles, like policy changes, public sentiment, legislative bursts, what you see is this wave pattern: action, then a major overreaction. It's not just history class stuff. I've been able to visualize these spikes in real historical data sets. The early Cold War, sudden surges in anti-communist legislation, new agent hires at the FBI, all trackable in frequency analysis. Sort of like we discussed last episode with document metadata. Look at the time series and clustering, it's all there. I think what gets overlooked is how these backlash cycles aren't just about people yelling on the news or in Congress. They show up in really granular ways, like ramped up data-driven surveillance, policy tightening, or even what and how folks are allowed to publish. Whether it's McCarthy-era blacklists or later using software to sift for undesirables, the mechanics look different, but the statistical pattern's pretty familiar. Human nature, I guess. We act, someone overreacts, and the numbers go haywire. It's honestly comforting, in a weird way, how reliable the cycle is when visualized over decades. And if you plot those policy changes against some of the big political spikes, you get this echo, this reverberation. Outcomes from one generation shaping the panic of another. The trick, as always, is being able to read that noise. All right. So let's round things out by jumping straight to the modern culture war stuff. Terms like woke, all those identity debates, the polarization you see blasting across every network and comment section. Maybe you remember from episode 6, We dug into the evolution and ambiguity of loaded words, how woke went from something specific to this catch-all ideological battleground. Here's what's interesting from a statistical and linguistic modeling point of view. Are we just reliving that age-old action-reaction cycle, or is something new happening? I always wonder, if you throw today's social media data into a good text AI, do you start to see the same polarization spikes you find in revolutionary pamphlets or McCarthy-era headlines? Honestly, the answer's looking like yes, kinda. The models show clustering around flashpoint words, frequency surges during high conflict periods, just like back in the Revolutionary Day. I ran a little side-by-side case study, nothing fancy, just basic keyword frequency, sentiment spread across revolutionary pamphlets, and, say, Twitter from the last couple of years. The persistent statistical pattern? Polarization. Certain words go hot just before or during periods of big division on both sides. Back then it was liberty, enemy, order. Now it's woke, cancel, freedom. It's sort of like history keeps running A/B tests using new vocab. So, wrapping up. Maybe we can't say with 100% certainty that today's culture wars are just reruns of the Red Scare or the French Revolution. But the data sure seems to hint at old patterns echoing through new channels. The linguistic and statistical fingerprints carry through if you know where and how to look. It really makes me wonder which of today's tremors will be the echoes folks are talking about in 50 years. That's it for now. Stay curious, and I'll catch you next time for another round of data-driven detective work.